Medicine is built on trust. Patients trust doctors with their lives, and society trusts science to protect rather than exploit. But history shows us moments where that trust has been broken, sometimes through arrogance, sometimes neglect, and sometimes deliberate deception. Today, we'll unpack some of the most infamous cases of medical misconduct across history, ask what we've learned, and consider where risks still remain. Power without consent. Medicine before modern ethics. Before modern bioethics, medicine often meant power without boundaries. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, patients, especially women, the poor and minorities, were subjected to experimental procedures without consent. For example, J. Marion Sims, often called the father of gynecology, conducted surgical experiments on enslaved black women without anesthesia. At the time, this was justified as advancing science. Today, we recognize it as exploitation and a violation of basic human dignity. What's often overlooked is the human toll. Their suffering remained unacknowledged for over a century, and only in recent years have their names and resilience have been honored publicly. War, atrocity, and the birth of the Nuremberg Code. The Second World War exposed medicine's darkest extremes. Nazi doctors carried out horrific experiments in concentration camps, freezing prisoners to test hypothermia, infecting wounds deliberately, and forcing sterilization. After the war, the Nuremberg trials put 23 doctors on trial, leading to the Nuremberg Code of 1947, the foundation of modern research ethics. It insisted on voluntary consent, the right to withdraw, and a duty to avoid unnecessary suffering. For the first time, medicine's power had written boundaries. At the doctors' trial in Nuremberg, 23 physicians stood accused. 16 were found guilty and 7 were executed. Beyond the verdicts, the trial left behind something far more enduring, the principle that the welfare of the subject must always outweigh the interests of science and society. Consent and privacy in the age of biology. Even after Nuremberg, breaches continued. A well-known case is Henrietta Lacks, an African-American woman whose cancer cells were taken in 1951 without her knowledge. Her cells, the HeLa line, became one of the most important tools in medical research, leading to vaccines, cancer treatments, and billions in profits. Yet her family remained uninformed for decades. The lesson: even well-intentioned science must respect individual rights to privacy, consent, and ownership. Regulatory failure and the thalidomide disaster. In the late 1950s, a German drug called thalidomide was marketed as a safe sedative and remedy for morning sickness, but it had never been properly tested on pregnant women. By the early 1960s, it became clear the drug caused severe birth defects. An estimated 10,000 children worldwide were born with limb deformities. The scandal shook public trust and forced governments to tighten drug regulation, demanding more rigorous testing and oversight. Survivors didn't just face physical disability, many underwent hundreds of surgeries, struggled to access education, and grew up fighting for workplace inclusion. Germany issued its first formal apology only in 2012, more than 50 years after the scandal began. Their advocacy continues to shape drug safety laws today. Deception in public health. The Tuskegee syphilis study. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service ran the Tuskegee syphilis study, tracking the natural course of untreated syphilis in African American men. Even after penicillin became a known cure in the 1940s, treatment was deliberately withheld. The truth only came to light in 1972, when whistleblower Peter Buxton leaked the story to the press. Public outrage was immediate, forcing the study to end. Families of the victims later sued and received a $10 million settlement in 1974, though the damage to trust in medicine remains immeasurable. The men were misled, denied proper care, and many died as a result. The study revealed how racism and exploitation could masquerade as research, and it remains a lasting wound in the history of American medicine. Exploiting the vulnerable Willowbrook and Guatemala. In the 1950s and 60s, children with intellectual disabilities at Willowbrook State School in New York were intentionally infected with hepatitis to study the disease. Parents were often pressured into consenting, and conditions were appalling. Similarly, in the 1940s, US researchers carried out syphilis experiments in Guatemala, deliberately infecting prisoners, soldiers, and psychiatric patients. These cases highlight how the vulnerable have repeatedly borne the costs of unethical experimentation. Fraud and the prestige economy. MMR and stem cells. Not all misconduct is about consent, some is about fraud. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield published a now discredited paper in The Lancet falsely linking the MMR vaccine to autism. The study was based on manipulated data and undeclared financial interests. The result: vaccine hesitancy, falling immunization rates, and real harm to public health. More recently, in 2005, South Korean scientist Wang Woo-suk claimed to have cloned human stem cells, a breakthrough that turned out to be fabricated. These cases show how the pressures of prestige, funding, and fame can corrupt science itself. Unsafe care and clinical failures. Misconduct isn't only about research, sometimes it's about neglect in clinical practice. The Bristol Royal Infirmary scandal in the 1980s and 90s revealed high death rates in children's heart surgery, fueled by poor oversight and arrogance among senior doctors. Similarly, the Mid-Staffordshire NHS Trust scandal in the 2000s exposed systemic neglect, with hundreds of patients dying needlessly in understaffed wards. These events remind us that ethical medicine is not just about research, but everyday care. Experimental surgery without safeguards. In the 2010s, Italian surgeon Paolo Moccherini rose to fame for pioneering trachea transplants using stem cells. But investigations revealed that patients were operated on without proper trials, leading to multiple deaths. He had falsified records and exaggerated results, showing how even in cutting-edge science, hype can overshadow safety. Corporate misconduct at scale. Corporations have also played a role in misconduct. The opioid crisis in the United States exposed how companies like Purdue Pharma aggressively marketed OxyContin while downplaying addiction risks. The result: hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths. By 2019, Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, filed for bankruptcy under the weight of lawsuits demanding over $10 billion in damages. The human toll was staggering: families torn apart, babies born dependent on opioids, and entire communities devastated by addiction. Similar scandals have involved tobacco companies hiding links to cancer or medical device firms pushing unsafe implants. These cases show misconduct isn't always about rogue doctors, sometimes it's systemic, tied to profit motives. Patterns of misconduct. Looking across these examples, certain patterns emerge. Vulnerable groups exploited because they lacked power. Shortcuts taken in the race for prestige or profit. Regulatory systems failing until tragedy struck. These patterns tell us misconduct isn't random. It's predictable when accountability, transparency, and patient voices are ignored. Do scandal lead to change? Every scandal has sparked reform. Nuremberg gave us research ethics. Thalidomide reshaped drug regulation. Tuskegee led to informed consent laws and institutional review boards. Wakefield's fraud pushed journals to strengthen peer review. But reforms often come only after harm is done, and memory fades, raising the risk of repeating mistakes. Where we remain at risk. Even today, risks persist. The rush of AI in healthcare raises questions of bias and privacy. Big data can unlock cures, but also compromise patient confidentiality. Global inequality means experiments may be outsourced to countries with weaker protections. And in times of crisis, whether a pandemic or conflict, the temptation to cut corners can resurface. Today, new frontiers bring new dangers. Artificial intelligence in diagnostics is already raising alarm, If algorithms are trained on biased data, entire groups may be misdiagnosed. And during global emergencies, pharmaceutical companies can face pressure to rush vaccines or treatments, risking transparency and public trust. Are we learning? As we reach the conclusion, one message is clear. Medical misconduct is not just history, it's a warning. From Sims to Tuskegee, from thalidomide to opioids, these cases remind us that progress without ethics is dangerous. But they also show that change is possible when societies demand accountability and reform. The challenge for today is simple: to remember these lessons, to listen to patients, and to put human dignity above all else. Because only then can medicine truly serve its purpose, to heal, not to harm.
Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable insights on appraisals, revalidation, and interesting topics in healthcare.